Hello everyone and welcome on back to the channel. You already know what time it is. It is time for me to share with you yet another non-meta fun build. There's one thing about me, it's I love a non-meta build where I just make something and don't really have any, well I have a sense to it, but I have no real desire to min-max it or really test the numbers. So you're gonna get what you're gonna get. So welcome back to the channel. I have been finally breaking into the weapon proficiencies that came with this expansion, and the first one that caught my eye in the beta was the Elementalist hammer. And when you pair it with Weaver, it becomes ultra tanky. You end up becoming this beautiful elemental mage knight that can withstand quite a heavy hit and quite a few blows due to your access to barrier, blocks, and evade frames. And evade frames can depend on your utilities and certain boons that you have, but all in all, you become so much more sustainable than maybe other elite specializations, or even when you look at the catalyst with the elite specialization that the hammer came with, I think Weaver feels a bit better when paired with the hammer instead of the catalyst with the hammer, but that's just my personal opinion. So let's get into the gear. First and foremost, the gear that I'm going with at the moment, because I'm feeling a bit more trustworthy in my abilities, I'm going with Berserkers on my gear. So going more power, precision, ferocity, but the rune that I'm running with is divinity, just to get a little catch-all. Elementalist tends to benefit, and almost every class tends to benefit, with all stat increase functions in terms of runes and or stats such as celestial. So I'm going with rune of divinity. And as for the weapon, I'm running with a hammer. Now, this is where, I'm going to be honest, this is the only ascended hammer that I had lying around on this character, and I'm not really looking to change it up anytime. Maybe if I really want to go hard, maybe make this raid ready. But it's got celestial stats on it. It is what it is, and I'm running with superior sigil of earth and superior sigil of strength, extra bleed up time, and then just also some extra might when I critically strike. And as for my back items and accessories, I'm running with dragon stats. This is where I get a little bit more vitality. So increasing my health pool to then increase some barrier. Now, just to mention about the hammer, if you don't want to do celestial, if you want to go more specific, you could either go dragons. I would typically recommend for this more bruisery build because it will give you a little bit extra vitality so you can take some more hits and match it with your accessories. I decided to go with Rune of the Flock to give myself barrier on my heal. Now, this isn't just me, but also my allies. And this build brings a little bit of group utility in that sense of padding out some extra blows, not only for yourself, but also your allies. This will trigger every 10 seconds. It has a cooldown of 10 seconds when you use your healing ability. But I've paired it with my Weaver Stance ability, which has 2 charges. So with timing right, you can actually get a decent cadence of barrier on yourself and your allies as well. I've decided to go with Rune of the Flock. You could also go with the new Relic of Lear, which could be interesting as well. Whenever you heal allies, you tether to them and take 50% of their damage if you want to go full true tank mode. And with Aquatic Stance, it's beneficial because it is an area of effect heal. So some things to think about, but at the moment I don't have Relic of Lear. I'm only going with Relic of the Flock. Now let's talk about the specializations. No arcane in sight. No arcane in sight. I am going with fire, earth, and weaver. You could maybe wiggle some arcane in here to get some more benefits from swapping attunements, but I've decided to go with a bit more of these like damage, defensive, and then weaver, a mixture of damage and defense. So for fire, I'm going with burning precision, power overwhelming to gain more power at certain might stacks, which helps because I'm taking sigil? Yes, Sigil of Strength, but I'm also taking Pyromancer's Puissance, which you gain might whenever you hit while in fire attunement. And this also allows you to share out might. So not only are you sharing out barrier with Rune of the Flock and other traits which we're going to get to, but we're also sharing out a little bit of might. So some group utility. Next, Earth, I'm taking Earth's Embrace, gain barrier when attuning to Earth. It's really nice. I kind of wish this was also like a 75% less strong whenever you just attune to a different attunement or when you leave Earth attunement. I like this trait a lot. It's good. It's solid. It's a nice defensive one. if you want to go more damage, you can go with serrated stones. I'm also taking Strength of Stone, gain condition damage based on your toughness, inflict bleeding whenever you immobilize a foe. I'm going just for some more damage, but if you want to bring an extra layer of group utility, you could go Rock Solid, which grants stability to allies when you attune to Earth. And then finally, Stoneheart. You cannot be critically hit for a duration of time after entering or exiting Earth attunement. It's a standard one. It's a good one. So, Stoneheart, I went with that. Finally, Weaver, kind of the star of the show, and making this build a little extra viable in a different bruisery playstyle. We have Superior Elements, increase damage to weakened foes, and your dual attacks apply weakness. I'm going to talk about a minor trait because this is actually really important. This is Elemental Refreshment. Grant barrier to yourself and nearby allies when using a dual attack. At first, I didn't really understand why it was an area of effect and why they made this, but I've kind of warmed up to it. I just don't like that it always has a blue ring around it, but it shows you the radius, and you'll just gain a little bit of barrier, but that barrier will be shared to allies as well. So whenever you're swapping into different attunements, pressing 3, and get some extra barrier. And this is where you can start to see that barrier be more consistent. Next, I'm going with a more defensive option, but you can go with a bit more damage if you want to with either Swift Revenge or Weaver's Prowess. Probably recommend Swift Revenge. But because I am experimenting with this, I've gone with Bolstered Elements, which gives you barrier whenever you activate a stance, and I have quite a few stances. And it will also automatically proc whenever you go below 50% health, which is just a nice little safety net. And then finally, I'm going with Invigorating Strikes. Gain vigor when using a dual attack, and whenever you dodge roll, you also gain barrier. So, as you can see, barrier, using your dual attunement ability, gaining vigor, which increases your endurance regeneration, also getting barrier. Many defensive elements starting to stack up in terms of increased access to dodge, increased access to barrier. Sharing out that barrier is very nice. And I was using Elements of Rage. However, I've noticed that I'm not spending a lot of time attuned to a pure attunement. I'm oftentimes within a mixture. Just because of the way that the hammer functions, I find it more exciting to gain 2 orbs instead of just 1. But if you happen to take the utility skill Unravel, sure. You want some more damage? Go with Elements of Rage. You want to do that. Now I want to talk about my actual abilities. So yeah, you have your hammer, but the dual attunements, the way that this works is that it will just create the orbs of the 2 attunements that you are currently in. So I'm in Fire Air. It'll conjure both the fire and the air orbs. And then if you space it out, you technically can get all 4 orbs with just 2 button presses. If you then swap to the other 2 that you're missing, pop that, and then you can use a really strong grand finale. If you want to go for that, but I like to kind of just pace it out and space it out so that my buffs can last a decent duration. Tend to sit more so in Fire Earth, and then using water as that defensive. If I happen to be going down really low, I'll swap to water to gain that heal. The only difficult/downside to water is that 4 and 5 is really strong for self-sustain. This will be your really strong condition cleanse and on your 5th. And then your 4th ability, Crashing Font, is where you get a really good chunk of your heal on your weapon ability. So just keep that in mind. Utility abilities, as I mentioned, Aquatic Stance. This will give me barrier because I'm using a stance ability, but also Relic of the Flock will spread out barrier to myself and also allies around me in a pretty decent radius. And I think a Relic of the Flock is like 1.6k barrier to yourself and allies. And then once this recharge white outline kind of gets halfway to this corner, you can then proc it again to show that it's been about 10 seconds. And you can use it again. So you can space it out. I'd say every 10 seconds you can spread out barrier and also additional healing whenever you strike targets. Another fun thing about this is with Aquatic Stance, the way that your orbs work, they're always passively striking. So if you just use this and you're in melee range and you just pop Aquatic Stance, you could be interrupted, but your heals will begin and still pulse, which is really nice. I actually really like that functionality quite a bit. In terms of Aquatic Stance and how the hammer improves that. I'm running with Glyph of Storms just because it's kind of your standard go-to. It's really nice. I'm gonna use my heal again. See, getting some barrier on my allies as well. Just a little extra something, something. And then as for my other stances, I'm using Stone Resonance, which is your standard self-barrier. And I'm also using Primordial Stance, which is your go-to damage. Pulses damage around you and conditions based off of the attunements that you're mixed in. If you're attuned to one attunement, it will just double up on that condition. So Fire Earth is really nice to get some of that burning and bleeding, which is usually what I do. And then also your orbs burning and bleeding. You can get a decent amount of condition stacks on this, and I really enjoy it. And I know this isn't really a condition build, but hey, damage over time, it helps. It really does. We're getting some condition damage benefits out of our toughness, even though we might not have a whole bunch of toughness. But it is what it is. It is what it is. And then for my elite, I'm running with Weave Self, just to get some buffs on my character while I am swapping through attunements. I tend to not use Tailored Victory. I wish Tailored Victory did more damage and maybe granted you a buff, just to make it a little bit more exciting to use it in a non-crowd control setting. But if you happen to be fighting an enemy with a Defiance bar, Tailored Victory is pretty nice because it does a decent chunk of Defiance damage. Elements to point out with this build is your Earth 4 is, if you can time it right, it only lasts a second and a half. But if you time it right, you get access to a block, which will give you barrier and also an aura that you're currently attuned to. And usually this ability would just give you an Earth aura or a magnetic aura, because when you're using it on a catalyst or any other specialization in terms of now, you're gonna be in Earth. And swapping to a different attunement in time was always a bit tricky. But now, because you can dual attune, whichever is your first one, you can have access to Immutable Stone, but because I'm in fire, I'll get access to that fire aura that I might want. Or if I happen to be mixed into, it's sometimes a bit difficult to like, oh, you gotta swap, just gotta swap to Earth first, and then let us swap to water. And then now, because of this, I'll get a frost aura. So I'll take reduced damage even then. So yeah, you can, if you are a bit more observant than I usually am, you can sometimes time which aura you want to get out of that particular ability, which is just another element of interest with the Weaver Hammer combo. But yeah, decent damage for open world. One element that I enjoy out of this build is just your might stacks, especially with the sigil and also the traits that I'm taking. You get a decent amount of might on yourself, even when you're just out and about striking enemies, both critically and just normal in fire. Getting up to 11 stacks. This can go up to 25 when you're facing enemies with larger health pools. And because I am mixing a bit more of sustain and survivability, having that extra might does come in handy when you're out in the open world. And might impacts both strike damage and condition damage, and you can get a decent amount of Connie damage out in terms of stacks of bleeding and burning. Ooh, I might need to actually like pay attention real fast. Hold on. Might need to pay attention. I'm gonna go into water, activate another stance. We're gonna get some more stance and then remove the flock. And see, if I was any other elementalist, I would have been in dire straits. But because I am this beautiful, okay, wow. The timing on that could not have been worse. But because I am playing this beautiful build, getting access to all this barrier and this healing and these dodge and evade frames, it was, you know, I sweated, maybe a little bead of sweat rolled down the back of my neck, but I felt confident. I really did. And then another element just to notify everyone about and to shine a light on are the buffs that the orbs come with. So another element of your defense is through Rocky Loop, which is the Earth Orb. This will reduce your incoming damage by 15%, and then Flame Wheel increases your damage by 10% for both, which is really nice. Air increases your crit chance, and then water, what does water do? Oh, reduces your incoming condition damage, which is nice, very nice. I wish it increased your like self-healing. And then, but thank you everyone. This was my little, tanky elemental. I don't know what I would call this in terms of like a sparkly fancy name, but that is the build. It's Mage Knight. If you want to be a little bit more, okay, excuse me, Husk. I'm trying to do an outro here. I can probably mess around with it some more and make it even tankier, especially with the stat combinations and other runes and sigils that you might go with. And I'm really interested in trying this out with Relic of Lear, just to see how that would feel in like a group scenario. Maybe take it into a strike and see how it fares in terms of the redirecting of damage. But I have so many more ideas for build videos now, and I've been messing around with a Firebrand longbow one, which is kind of fun. So I might make a little video on that as well. But I have my own critiques about Firebrand in general, and I don't know if they'll ever get resolved or be shifted to be a little bit more usable, but it is what it is. This is a video about Elementalist, and thank you all so much for watching. Like the video if you'd like to comment below your thoughts. Any of the profession and weapon combinations you'd like me to try out. You could also order Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure using my link down below, and also affiliated with DXRacer. You can pick up some DXRacer items with 5% off using code KROOF. Thank you, last but not least, to my patrons for supporting the channel. Get early access to videos, some exclusive videos every once in a while. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone!